Good evening. As you can see, I'm not outside. I'm actually at home right now. And you're probably wondering why I'm doing a video from home. Well, I figured it might be a good idea to reminisce on a few trips that I took. I know that I just recently started kind of doing these travel vlogs or whatever. It's a fairly new thing. But because because I have a lot of information to share from previous experiences, I figured I'd just do that for you. So um, this was actually a suggestion from my friend Diana, and I took her up on it. So I'm going to talk about my early August trip to Oregon and Washington. The Pacific Northwest. If you've never been there, I would highly suggest you check it out. It's one of my favorite parts of the country. I just can't say enough about how beautiful it is there, and it's kind of one of those things where you see pictures of it, but then when you see it in person, the pictures don't do it justice. So definitely get out there if you can. It's unbelievable. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off talking about each place that I went that really stood out to me, starting from the beginning of my trip and going all the way to the end. So, the first place that I'm going to start with is Trillium Lake. This was the first place I visited on my first full day in Oregon. So, Trillium Lake is located probably about like a little less than an hour southeast of Portland. It's in the Mount Hood National Forest, and it Trillium Lake is it's not a very big lake. It's a little bit off the map, but when you see it, you can see why it's such a popular and uh, epic place to visit because when you look at the lake, you see Mount Hood right on the other side, very, very, very clearly, and it seems very close as well. Um, but to make matters even better, you can see Mount Hood reflecting off the lake. It's just very, very picturesque. And then, of course, it's surrounded by all those tall balsam fir trees out there. Uh, it Again, it's one of those things. I'm going to show you pictures of it, but it's one of those things where the pictures don't really do it justice. You got to be there to see it. So, but that's going to be the next picture that I show on here. It's Trillium Lake and Mount Hood National Forest. So after that, uh, we decided to go and take a trip up to something. It's a place called Rowena Crest. Rowena Crest is uh, just past Hood River along the Columbia River. In case you're not sure what Hood River is, Hood River is about a little over an hour east of Portland. Um, and Rowena Crest is probably about 10 minutes east of Hood River. So about an hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes east of Portland, right past the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Corridor. Rowena Crest is really interesting because you start to see some different topography from what you typically see in the Portland area, the Mount Hood National Forest, the Oregon coast, and all of that. It gets a little more arid, but the view from up there is spectacular anyway. It's really really cool because it's so different, but you see some pretty amazing colors, and um, I I think it's probably one of the most underrated attractions in Oregon, actually. So um, I'm gonna put that on. That's gonna be the next picture that I show you. That's pretty much what we ended my first day doing. So here it goes. All right. So the next day, we took a bit of a longer trip. We went down to um, a place called Smith Rock. Smith Rock is near, I don't want to say near, it's just a little bit northeast of Bend. Bend is in central Oregon. I would say it's probably about a 2.5, maybe 3 hour drive. I'd say probably closer to 3 hours from Portland. Um, it's mostly to the south, a little bit to the east. Uh, but Smith Rock was really, really interesting. I almost felt like I was in Arizona. The climate is just very different there than what you would normally think of when you think of Oregon and Washington. But it was absolutely beautiful nonetheless, and it was a beautiful day too. I mean, blue skies, super warm, but not extremely hot. It just it was just an amazing experience. Plenty of places to walk around, plenty of things to see, and if you're adventurous, you could hike up to the top of Smith Rock. I wasn't quite that adventurous, so I there were also some people rock climbing too. In fact, quite a few. We heard some people really, really getting into it. Making the grunting noises and all of that, trying to get to the top. It just seemed like they were just really having a great time. So, Smith Rock is definitely a place I would easily return to. I'm really glad I saw it. We also went to the Painted Hills, and that was pretty nice, but it paled in comparison to Smith Rock. I can't say enough great things about it. So if you're ever in Central Oregon, you got to see this. So this will be the next picture that I show. So the next day, we decided to not travel quite as far. We decided to go see what was right in the backyard of where I was staying, right in Portland. So we went to the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Corridor. It's just to the east of Portland, and or that's where it starts, I should say. And it goes all the way over to Hood River. So it's about an hour worth of just mesmerizing views along Interstate 84. The Columbia River Gorge, well, the Columbia River borders Oregon and Washington. So the Columbia River Gorge is really in both states when you think about it. And I happen to think that Oregon has some of the better views, but Washington also has some really nice views of Oregon. So really, you got to see both sides when you go. The gorge is where the infamous Multnomah Falls is. And, of course, I had to include a picture of Multnomah Falls because, you just have to. It's what you do when you go to Oregon. There's no way that you can go and visit and not see Multnomah Falls. In fact, it's so popular that they were doing a reservation system over the summer. And I don't know if they're still doing it now, but they had to make sure they were controlling the crowds because it just gets way too busy. And there's a reason for that. Like I said, you're going to see these pictures and think, oh, wow, that's really pretty. But the pictures don't do it justice. Seeing it in person is just such a much different experience. So that's going to be the next photo that I include. So you can check it out. All right. So after Multnomah Falls, we went over to um, the Vista House at Crown Point. The Vista House at Crown Point is near Corbett, which is a very small town, um, east of Portland. Uh, right near, I would say it's kind of near where Multnomah Falls is, except it's up toward the top. You get some really spectacular views up there. And it looks in both directions. It looks to the west and looks to the east, but the views to the east are, I would say, even more spectacular because you're seeing the whole gorge and the mountains and the river valley. And again, this is one of those things where seeing the picture, you think, oh, okay, this is beautiful, but seeing it in person is just a totally different experience. So I would say that. I would say this, along with Multnomah Falls, this is a must see. You have to stop and see this if you're ever over there. So here comes the photo. So after that, we went over to Cascade Locks, which is further east on Interstate 84, getting further away from Portland and further towards Hood River. Cascade Locks is right in the heart of the Columbia River Gorge. It's pretty much smack dab in the middle. It's kind of where it all comes together. I would say it's pretty upscale. It's a little pricey to stay there, but there's a reason why. It's nice. There's also a park in Cascade Locks that has an island called Thunder Island. Thunder Island is an old island that was used for the canal locks that used to exist there before dams were built, to control the water flow, many years later. But the island still remains, and there's still plenty of spectacular views to be had from there. One site of that's pretty well known in Cascade Locks is the Bridge of the Gods. The Bridge of the Gods takes you from Oregon to Washington, or bridges Oregon and Washington, and in both directions. So it's always a very, very interesting backdrop with any picture that you take. So I ended up taking a photo once we got to the Washington side. We went over the Bridge of the Gods because, it's just something you got to do if you're out there. And I got a picture from the Washington side of the Bridge of the Gods with the mountains in Oregon in the background. And that picture was just, again, it's a beautiful picture, but just being there and seeing that was amazing. So that's going to be the next picture that I show. It's right near Stevenson, Washington, right on the other side of the Bridge of the Gods, coming over from Cascade Locks. So here it goes. All right. So, we saw several more things. I'm not going to include all the pictures because I think I showed you the best stuff that I saw. But, after a whole day spent in the gorge, the next day we went to the coast. So the Oregon coast is very, honestly, like, I'm not being very detailed when I say the Oregon coast because Oregon's a very large state and the coastline is hundreds and hundreds of miles. So, specifically, I went to the northern coastline. So I would say pretty much everything between Oswald West State Park and Astoria. I didn't go any further south than Oswald West. That part of the Oregon coast is less than 2 hours away from Portland, so it's a pretty very, very easy day trip. And the drive is pretty nice. You go through a lot of forest on the way out there. But among my favorite sites on the coast is a place called Ecola State Park. Ecola State Park has actually been in a few movies, including Kindergarten Cop, which came out in 1990. There was a scene where they were filming a festival going on in a park with some, beautiful views of the ocean in the background. That was at Ecola State Park. And I have to say that This photo that I took, I think, is probably the most picturesque photo that I took while I was in Oregon. This view never ever gets old, and I think it's one of my favorite places of everything that I visited. Probably even more than, seeing Mount Hood and seeing the things in the gorge. I really think Ecola is probably like my number one favorite spot in the Pacific Northwest that I've seen so far. So, here's the photo. So after Ecola State Park, we went up to Astoria. Astoria, again, has been featured in quite a few movies. And, honestly, the ones I remember the most off the top of my head were the aforementioned, the Kindergarten Cop movie from 1990. Short Circuit. I don't know if you remember that one. That was also, a blast from the past in the 80s. And The Goonies. If you haven't seen The Goonies, that's an 80s classic. It's one of those things where if you like 80s movies, you have to see The Goonies. But anyway, we saw the Goonies house. I'm not going to show you a picture because everybody knows what that looks like. I don't have to go and reinvent the wheel there. But there's also a place in Astoria called the Astoria Column. The Astoria Column it almost looks like a lighthouse tower in a way, but it's not. It's just a tower. So there's no elevator. You have to walk all the way up, and there's stairs like you would have in a lighthouse. Put it this way, it's not probably not a good idea for somebody who gets winded easily. I remember I was huffing and puffing by the time I got to the top, but the views up there were worth it. I'm going to show you a picture of that as well, just to show you, what made the column such an important part of the trip. All right, so moving on to the next day, we went to Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens can be accessed by something called the Spirit Lake Highway. It's not that far north of Portland. It's probably it's definitely less than 2 hours. You just take Interstate 5 up to the Spirit Lake Highway. It's an exit right off of Interstate 5. And you follow the Spirit Lake Highway all the way to the end at a place called Johnston Ridge. That is the closest that you can get to Mount St. Helens. It On the day that we went, it was pretty nice, a little windy, but the view of Mount St. Helens from that close, it doesn't feel like it's as prominent because you're already up so high to begin with. So, it's kind of like you get up there and you think, God, this thing is dinky. Well, it's really not. It just seems like it because you're already up high. Whereas if you were all the way at the bottom and looking up, it would be a very different story. But still, it's pretty cool to, see that and, kind of get some information about, what happened during the 1980 eruption and how different it looks now. I mean, Mount St. Helens used to actually have a cone-shaped top. It looked just like a normal volcanic mountain. After the eruption, it totally changed everything, the shape and, the topography of the land around there. So, I enjoyed Mount St. Helens. It definitely was not one of my favorite spots, but I'm glad I did it because, it's just, it's historical. And I would say if you're a geologist and really into that, you're going to find Mount St. Helens to be extremely fascinating. I'll show you a quick picture of that as well. All right. So the next day, we took a very, very long day trip. I'm talking, leaving like before 5 a.m. and getting back pretty late. So we went up to Olympic National Park. Olympic National Park is in the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State, near Port Angeles. Put it this way, where it's located, just on the other side of the water that separates it from the other piece of land to the north, that's Canada. So you're that far north from Portland. It's probably about a 5-hour drive, maybe closer to 5.5, 6 if you have to stop. It's definitely a long, exhausting drive. When we got there, we went up to Hurricane Ridge, which is probably the most scenic and important part of Olympic National Park. You see some beautiful views. Unfortunately, the views were not that great that day because there were wildfires to the north of us coming down from Canada, and it obstructed our view quite a bit with all the smoke. I did get a few, decent shots. I'm going to show you one of them, maybe a couple, actually. I'll show you a couple shots. But it's something that I'm definitely going to have to return to another time because I'm not satisfied. I want to be able to see it when it's completely clear. So yeah, that's the next thing that's coming up. So on Friday, that was a much more relaxing day. To tell you the truth, I needed it after, the long trip, long day trip the day before. But we decided to go on the Sternwheeler, which is a boat outside, out of Cascade Locks that does cruises of the gorge. They got lunch cruises, dinner cruises, and just regular sightseeing cruises. We did the dinner cruise, and the food was pretty good. But really, the best thing about it, were the views. Unfortunately, it was very hot, so there was a lot of haze. Made the views not quite as. They were a little more obstructed than they were on the really clear day that we were there a few days prior. So, but still, it was a great experience, and I definitely do it again. I think it's just really cool seeing everything from the middle of the water and seeing both sides. So I'll show you a quick picture that I got from that as well. So my final day there, we went to the Oregon Zoo, and when we went, I mean, it's a pretty cool zoo. It seems like the animals have a lot of space, and it's quite a good variety of animals that you can see. A lot of them are rescues, which cannot, where they were injured to the point where they couldn't be released back into the wild. So they kind of have a nice little sanctuary there to be taken care of and live a fulfilling life where they couldn't otherwise survive. So, but I enjoyed that as well. I took a lot of pictures, but I'm not going to share them because I think it's just something that, a person has to go and see, themselves, just to really experience it. It's one thing to see pictures of animals, which is great and everything, but another thing to be there actually being with them. So, but that's pretty much my trip in the nutshell. I know that it was probably a pretty long video, but I just thought that, hearing about my experiences and sharing my experiences and, giving some recommendations on, what a person should see when they go to the Pacific Northwest should be. So yeah, I hope you all have a great night. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you all again soon. All right, bye.